Yes, John?
Did I ever tell you the story of the first time I got my ass canned?
No.
Well, it's actually a pretty interesting story, and I thought it would be pretty fitting given the fact that, well, we're going through an economic crisis right now, and what we've seen just in the last 2 weeks is a record number of people suddenly losing their jobs. Millions. It's pretty insane. And so, what I wanted to do was share with people this story about, what it felt like, because it helps me appreciate what one is having a job and not having to worry about like losing a job, but also to kind of show you that at the end of the day, sometimes things happen in life for a reason, and that reason is an opportunity to level up.
I'm ready, and we're ready to listen to that story.
Well, it was many, many eons ago in a galaxy far, far away. Actually, no, it was maybe like in the 90s or so. That kind of paints a picture about how old I was. But yeah, my very first job was a job out in San Francisco. And I left everything I knew behind from the East Coast, because that's where all my family is. That's where all my friends were. And I drove all the way cross country in my little Honda Del Sol, a little 2-seater car that I had just bought, and went to work at this company. At the time, it was called US Gold, and it was a video game company. So that was me fulfilling my dream of finally breaking into the game industry. I'm like, yes, I finally freaking did it. Because honestly, I didn't know what else I was going to do with my life. For me, gaming was where I knew I wanted to be. I spent my whole childhood getting to that point, realizing, yeah, I'm a nerd and I'm just going to get into gaming. But back then, it really wasn't much of a thing. There was no real industry of gaming. You really had to go out of your way to find this job. I made a whole nother video about how I got that job.
That's right.
But when I did finally get it and I was working there, I was just so happy to finally just work on anything gaming related. And my big break finally came when they were working on this new 3D game, this fandangled type of game, and with all new fancy 3D graphics on the PlayStation, and at that time the Sega Saturn, it just come out, and it was this female adventurer. She would wander through these ancient ruins to find treasure. And she would just jump from ledge to ledge, fighting off monsters with her guns. Pew, pew!
Okay.
You know what game I'm talking about?
Tomb Raider!
That's right, baby. It was Tomb Raider. And I was like, that's my first big break. I instantly knew when I saw this game that it was going to be a big hit. And I started to work on it. I started thinking all right, what can I do to help promote it? Started showing it to the press. At that time, I did a mix of work in marketing and in production, was just a peon. But the fact is that a lot of my ideas were starting to gel. People were going yeah, this could become the next big thing. I was a big early believer in this game. And right when things were starting to take off, they go, boom, an announcement, y'all. We as a company are going to merge with a bunch of other companies. And that's when US Gold merged with all these different companies, and they became what was eventually known as Eidos, this big company called Eidos. And Eidos really became synonymous with Tomb Raider. So we were the U.S. branch of that. I was in San Francisco at the time, and I worked in the financial district downtown. So I felt like, well, this is really cool. I kind of made my first big job, middle of the city, working on the biggest game I think is going to be possible. I can see the potential. And then the next day, the CEO goes, come into my office, you all, you, and you too, John. I'm like, oh, I've never been invited to the CEO's office before. I'm gonna, got my notebook out, coming in there all right, what does he want me to work on next? And he's like,
oh, shit.
Hey, you all can, see y'all later. And that was it. And that usually happens, right, after a mergers and acquisition scenario. When companies form together, they usually lay people off. And one of the first groups of people that always get laid off are the people that work in marketing. And that was a lot of what I was doing. Because you have redundancy now, right? You have a lot of extra marketing people, not enough product. And that's part of the whole process. That's how they save money. And so I was one of those people that was let go. And they say it to you in the nicest possible way. Thank you for your contribution. You all have done really, really great. But with these type of scenarios, we have to find ways to cut costs. And unfortunately, that means there's redundancies, and that means that your position is eliminated, which is in essence them just saying you're fired, so see ya type of thing. When I was going through it, all I remember was everything after that point was just a haze. I just felt like an out of body experience, just feeling numb, just saying goodbye to everybody. We all went down to the bar downstairs, and people were like, John, sorry, man, we're really sorry to see you get laid off. I'm like, yeah, but like, it's just a haze.
Right.
And I was in that haze for like a good couple of days, and so that I know what that feels like.
So what's the difference of lay off and you're fired?
The difference is that there is no difference. You still lose your job. Well,
Really?
There is a technical difference. The difference with layoffs is that they usually put things in a frame of a layoff because of reasons that are outside of your expertise. In other words, you are fired because usually you have done something poorly. So they say you are fired. You did this, you're out. But if you're laid off, it's because of something that's happening with the company. And usually it's more than just one person, like a group of people are laid off. You lay off, maybe people
like group.
Usually it's groups of people.
And at the same time.
Usually at the same time, right? To protect themselves from individual liability, like lawsuits and stuff like that. But layoffs, it could happen because you get paid too much. Like, I think I was laid off once before in that scenario. Like, from all the different people, I was probably the most expensive product manager to keep. And I've seen other scenarios where a whole department is laid off because it's a redundancy, like what happened to Eidos type of thing. So there's a lot of different reasons. But you know what? The thing is that when you're getting laid off, I always sort of encourage people like to try to take a little bit of time off to recollect yourself, because I know it's really hard and you want to just jump back on your feet and try to find another job. Some people didn't have a choice. For me, I knew I needed the job because I moved out there myself. I didn't have any backup plan. I mean, all these things stacked up against me of like, am I going to be able to survive? And I tried to look for a job, but the truth is that your mind isn't in the right place when that's happening.
Like you're not prepared yet to move forward because of the unexpected.
The shock. Yeah. I mean, if the first couple of days is shocked, get ready for depression for the next couple of weeks. And I think as you get better at it, the more you can, especially in particular, like for everyone who does get laid off, you have to really kind of accept that.
Absorb.
It's like accepting, accept the reality of it. And the quicker you're able to move on to like, you know what, there's definitely better something out there for me, right? Mm-hmm. And that was when, for me, things started to click, because I started going, all right, you know what? I don't have to stay here. I really wanted to stay in San Francisco. I just moved out there. But if I didn't have enough money, then maybe I have to move back east to, where family is type of thing, and move back home, sort of thing. So I opened up my eyes for the very first time. Like, I will go work anywhere in the world, even though I feel like I just moved here. Like, I put a lot of effort into that. Ironically enough, within a couple of weeks, I had heard about this other company back in Bethesda, Maryland, which ironically enough is where Northern Virginia is. And that's like where all my family is. Like, it literally is the only well-known video game company there. And it was Bethesda Softworks. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Bethesda Softworks, nobody knew who it was. Mm-hmm. It was just a rinky-dink private developer. And they had just one really good hit of a game in this series called the Elder Scrolls series. And they were working on a sequel at that time called Daggerfall. And when I was reading up about it and I heard about it, I'm like, wow, this is a cool game. This is one of those kind of big role-playing games that I love to play. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I decided to make a choice around, I'm going to look for opportunities around the kind of games where I can get personally invested in. I didn't want to just jump to the one that paid me the most or to the company that had the biggest brand name. Mm-hmm. I cared about whether or not what I worked on, I could believe in it, because I knew that if I could get myself wrapped up into it, then I would put an extra 110%.
Right. You're motivated to
Exactly.
work.
And when you're motivated to work, you shine, you do better, you get promoted more. And I had started to experience that with Tomb Raider, and then was snatched from me. So for me, it was like, how do I move on to the next big hit? Like, it wasn't just to move on to a proven game like Mario, right? Mm. Or at the time, Madden had just come out in a couple and they were doing really well. I'm like, the Elder Scrolls, if I can make this a big game, then I can make a name for myself. So I applied for the job and I got it. So I'm like, all right, well, what do you know? I'm moving back East Coast. I basically got rid of everything that I owned, which honestly wasn't much left because I was sleeping on the floor. I just didn't have enough money to buy furniture. I mean, literally, it was just a studio apartment. And I'm like, that's it. I picked up, moved back, and I worked on this Elder Scrolls game. And it took a couple of years to get there, but it ended up becoming Game of the Year product when it finally launched. And today, it's probably considered one of the top 10 games in the world, that game series. And, me be able to work on it at that early stage. I don't want to say like it was because of what I did. Again, I was still a pretty early stage peon, but that opportunity to work at a company like Bethesda, which was private, allowed me to do everything. Like I learned everything about game industry when I was at Bethesda because I could work in limited production. I worked in QA. I was even at the assembly plant putting together the boxes to ship them because the orders were so many.
That was great experience.
Oh, that was the worst experience of my life. Freaking hated that job. That's grueling freaking work, working on an assembly line.
No, your time with
But I did appreciate that opportunity to level up.
You were able to experience every department and learn.
Very rare for a company to allow you to go do that today. Everyone's compartmentalized. But I would never have taken that opportunity or even realized like that was a better way to think about your career path had I not gotten fired from my first job. So you have to get over it. You have to look back and like, all right, did I just become the luckiest person to get freed up to pursue anything I want? Otherwise, what people do is they get so caught up in like, well, all I know is how to do this. So the next job I guess I will do the same thing. And they just quickly jump back into the next thing. And I'm a big advocate for when you lose your job, that's like a wake-up call to like shake things up. To like say, all right, well, why don't I try something new? Maybe something that I've never had a chance to do before. You know, something that I wish I could have done when I was working. Well, I guess now that I am not working, I have take a chance.
Yeah.
Right? Why not take the chance?
Yeah. Take the risk.
Always take the risk because at that point, you've already lost your number one time sinker of the day, right? Which is just working a full-time job.
What a story. It's a great story, John. It's very current. It's relevant to what's going on right now. It's just the cycle of life. We lost something and then we find a better one.
You know, so don't worry too much about what you lose in life because sometimes you have to let go of something in order to pick something up again. And sometimes it's too scary to let go of things, which means that the better opportunity could have passed you by. Like for instance, right, even though I only got to work on Tomb Raider a little bit, which arguably had actually ended up becoming one of the biggest games of all time, the fact is, fulfillment-wise, I really enjoyed working on Daggerfall and the Elder Scrolls series a lot more because I got to be hands-on. I got to experience every part of it. Whereas my role in Tomb Raider was just a marketing guy. Like I never really had any input in terms of like how the game was designed. I never got involved with any part of the business. You know, again, they just became a huge, big corporation because they absorbed all these companies. I would have been a peon as part of a small group at that point. While at Bethesda Softworks, which was a small company, everyone felt like they had an opportunity to be involved in that process. Like I felt like I had a piece of ownership with it, even though I'm just one person in many parts of the department there to make that thing happen. And I wouldn't have been able to like go for it because I'd be like, oh, I'm in San Francisco, or no, I already got this job. I wouldn't have even realized it existed. And that opportunity was by far a much more defining one in my career.